Glad to see you, Brave Champ, again. We've learned a lot so far. In the last session, we have gone through the concepts of a loop. Moving ahead, in this topic, we will be learning about the collection of similar data, i.e. an array. So let's continue with a simple example of an array. An array can be a collection of all the books in a library management system. Think of an array as a dictionary, or phone book. It holds a collection of data, be them numbers, phone numbers, addresses, contact information, etc. It is used in every possible situation where you need to gather similar objects in one place. Arrays are just a container that holds several values. An array is used to store elements of the same data type. It is a fixed collection of the same data type that is stored immediately and that are stored at a certain position, index. We can access array values by its numeric index. Arrays are classified into three types. Single-dimensional array, multidimensional array, jagged array. Before moving ahead into the detailed explanation of types of array, let's see if you are aware of an array or not. Come on, champ, let's dive into the types of array. Our first option will be the first type, known as a single-dimensional array. A fish explores the ocean in search of food in the same way we will be exploring it in search of knowledge. Remember, champ, knowledge never goes waste. So start learning today. A one-dimensional array is like a list of items or a table that consists of one row of items or one column of items. One-dimensional array stores all the elements of an array in a single row starting with index 0 until the end of the array. It contains a single row and multiple columns. For example, a list of grades 88, 96, 82, 90, 79. In VB.NET we use dim statement to declare an array. The syntax to declare a one-dimensional array is as follows. N does not indicate the number of elements in the array, it is 1 less than the number of elements, N1, because the first element is always the 0th element. The above statement declares a 10-element array, indexed 0 to 9. Let's consider another example. Suppose you want to track sales amounts for every day of the present month. You might declare a single-dimensional array with 31 elements, one for each day of the month, as the following example shows. The next step would be to give some meaningful structure to an array. So let's learn to initialize an array followed by declaration. Arrays can be created and initialized in one line using the following command. This can also be done with arrays of different data types. For character arrays, the elements should be within single quotes inside the. We can initialize arrays as follows. When we execute the above Visual Basic program, we will get the result as shown below. I'm sure you are an expert in playing chess. Am I right? Sometimes I may be wrong. I think so, especially in this case. Consider a chessboard where you have an 8x8 set of squares that the pieces move around on, with each square addressed by a row number and column character. The chessboard is a natural multidimensional array. Multidimensional arrays are also called rectangular arrays. In VB.NET, multidimensional arrays can support either 2 or 3-dimensional series. To create multidimensional arrays, we need to use comma, separator inside of the brackets. For example, or. In cases where you need to use 2 dimensions of data, you use a multi-dimensional array. A perfect example for 2-dimensional arrays would be to use them to store the available seats in a cinema. Here's a visual representation of what I'm referring to. Let's go through the examples of creating 2-dimensional arrays in Visual Basic Programming Language. Arrays start counting at 0, so if you observe the above example, we created a 2-dimensional array with 5 rows, 5 columns. For initializing multi-dimensional arrays we use curly brackets. So the initialization for 2-dimensional array will be as. And the initialization for 3-dimensional array will be as. Arrays start counting at 0, so if you observe the above examples, we declare and initialize a 2-dimensional array with 3 rows and 2 columns and a 3-dimensional array with 3 dimensions. After observing the grid, do you have any idea? In what way can we make use of a grid? Yes, of course, the grid is used to solve the puzzle, but we can make use of the grid in interesting ways. So let's follow the interesting path, and why not make it more interesting in terms of programming? When we execute the above Visual Basic program, we will get the result as shown below. So finally we are at the last type of array. Before diving into the detailed explanation of the jagged array, let us first understand the concept of a jagged array practically. You can consider a jagged array as a movie ticket counter where ticket selling counters are fixed, rows are fixed, but you don't know how many people will be standing in each counter in a queue. Column numbers are not fixed and can vary on different rows. Jagged arrays are array of arrays. Jagged array is also a multi-dimensional array with different numbers of rows and column elements. This type of array can be used to reduce the space occupied by an array since all rows don't have an equal number of columns. In VB.NET, the jagged array can be declared with 2 brackets. The first bracket will specify the size of an array and the second one will specify the dimension of the array which is going to be stored as value. Moving further, let's go through the examples of creating jagged arrays with a single and multi-dimensional array. Jagged array with single-dimensional array. Jagged array with 2-dimensional array. If you observe the above examples, the first array is allowed to store 2 elements of the single-dimensional array, and the second array 1, is allowed to store 3 elements of a multi-dimensional array. In VB.NET, we can initialize the arrays upon declaration. In jagged arrays, the size of elements is optional. So, for some elements, we didn't mention the size to store arrays with different sizes based on our requirements.